think of Scooter, I think of a sweet, small, thin kid. But when he hit the stage and that light hit him, he was a totally different animal. It was something in his eyes. It was almost like it was past hunger. I think that's what hurt so much when it happened later.
I remember them dragging him out the car, and he had, like, blood coming out his mouth. And I was just screaming, screaming, screaming.
Police here in Baltimore are used to acts of retaliation. This was payback on a whole nother level.
There was a bloody tennis match going back and forth throughout the city.
How many people you gonna hurt? How many people gotta suffer for it to end?
The saying is, if you're going to seek revenge, make sure you dig 2 graves.
June 25th, 2016. At 6:57 p.m., police in Baltimore, Maryland respond to an emergency call near Morgan State University.
We received a phone call from our dispatcher notifying that a shooting had taken place at Harford Road and Moravia Road. We responded out to the location. When we got out there, there were people everywhere.
The crowd is gathered around a gray Honda that has crashed into a liquor store. Onlookers say the vehicle careened off the road after it was shot at by an unidentified gunman.
The driver's side was literally riddled with bullets. There were a number of bullets struck into the car, into the roof, out the other side. Speaking with the primary officer, they gave me a breakdown about what took place. An adult male had been shot. Adult male was subsequently transported to Johns Hopkins Hospital.
The victim is 23-year-old rapper Tyrese Watson, better known to his fans by his stage name.
Someone came up to me and said that this is Scooter. At that time, I had no idea who Scooter was.
Tyrese Trayvon Watson was born on April 13th, 1993. He grew up near Pennsylvania Avenue in West Baltimore, a neighborhood with strong ties to Black music history.
Years ago, I'm talking like the 60s, 70s, you had the biggest names come to do concerts on Pennsylvania Avenue. Frank Sinatra, Commodores. This is where everything took place. Because of the influx of drugs that have infiltrated the community, there has been a fall off.
Scooter's rise to stardom would hit a few snags along the way. As a teenager, he got mixed up in some illegal activities and briefly lost sight of the big picture. In 2011, at age 17, he was arrested for drug possession. But this turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
Scooter was placed into a program called the Violence Prevention Initiative, or VPI.
In 2014, Scooter's song Bird Flu became the unofficial.
It was so fun. Just imagine you and your significant other are in the same field. Y'all both getting paid to do what y'all like to do, getting big money to do what you like to do. Y'all both coming home with a bag. Y'all both happy. Like, it was just, that was a great night.
As his reputation grew, Scooter began using his platform to spread a message of nonviolence.
He was one of the few people that you could actually see making it to the next level. I think Scooter was going to perpetuate that positive attitude and give everybody hope.
You know, he took his craft very seriously, spent a lot of time in the studio, and now he's going to peace rallies, trying to get back to the community, trying to tell kids that are coming behind him, you don't have to go that route.
To give young fans who wanted to see them do something other than what they normally do. You know, Scooter wasn't a basketball player, but you can tell he was having fun.
For everyone involved, it was a major success. But less than an hour after the rally ended, tragedy struck.
I just remember, like, you know, being happy that we had another successful event. And then I remember getting a call Leaving the gym, the Scooter got shot.
As Scooter is rushed to the hospital, Baltimore police begin questioning potential witnesses. One of them immediately stands out.
My attention was really put toward a woman that was crying, very distraught on the side of the road. Come to find out that that was Taylor Johnson, the girlfriend of Little Scooter.
Taylor says she was in the passenger seat when the vehicle crashed, but is too traumatized to remember exactly what happened.
When the police officer got there, I remember him saying, "What's your name? What's your address? What's your date of birth?" And I was like, "I don't know. I literally did not know. I couldn't tell him nothing." He was like, "Well, can you call somebody? Do you know a number?" And I remember grabbing my phone and dialing. I was calling everybody that was close to me, like, "Come right here."
As friends and family race to the scene, the detective receives devastating news.
He is rushed to the hospital, but despite doctors' greatest effort,
Of rapper Lil Scooter, shot by an unknown gunman on his way home from a peace rally.
We had about 11 shell casings that were located in the intersection, were right at the light. The caliber of gun we discovered was a .40 caliber handgun. There were no shell casings in the vehicle, which leads us to understand that the shooters were clearly on the outside of the vehicle. All the shots were coming in from the driver's side into the vehicle.
his girlfriend, who was sitting right next to him in the passenger seat, left the scene physically unscathed.
I believe in God, and there was nothing but God watching over her during that time. There were bullet holes literally right over top of her head, where her head would have been. Had she had moved any other direction, she would have been killed also.
It seems clear Scooter was targeted. The question is why?
It's a major intersection. There are surveillance cameras in that intersection. And I remember them getting me the surveillance video rather quickly.
We were able to get video footage of Scooter and Sneaky T walking out of Morgan State University, going toward their car. Shortly thereafter, the Nissan Quest following them as they were traveling down Cold Spring Lane, which turns in to Moravia Road. We're able to see the Nissan Quest do an illegal U-turn in the middle of the street and break fast going after them, going in that direction.
But the individual who got out to do the shooting couldn't make out that person very well from it.
Just after the shooting had taken place, coming into the parking lot, backing out, and then fleeing in the opposite direction.
Still recovering from shock, Scooter's girlfriend, Sneaky T, sits down with police.
It was very hot that day. Well, I remember me getting dressed at home. I had a show that day too. He didn't have a show, I had a show. So we was like, we're gonna go to the rally and then chill later until your show. We get to the game and me and my friend go sit in the bleachers. We were just chilling, playing on our phone, taking pictures. They, playing basketball. Nothing weird. It was just a normal day.
When the game ended, Taylor says she and Scooter got back in the car to drive home, but they weren't familiar with the area.
I'm from South and West, and he from West, so we really didn't have a real good sense of direction of where we were going. We used the GPS to get to the game. So we were leaving the game. I feel like I was typing in an address in my GPS or something. I remember hearing something loud, like a firework. And we both kind of like ducked, like when you hear something loud, like, what was that?
She ducked down, tried to get as small as she could in the vehicle. Thank God she did.
And I heard another one. They kept coming, like, five, 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 five. The first shot, it was like a pop, like a pause with it or something. And then the shots kept going. So I just grabbed the door and just jumped out the car. As I got out the car, I was walking backwards. And I could see the shooter had like something white over his face. But you could tell that he never looked at me when I got out the car. Like never turned or like pointed the gun to me. Like he was determined, like he wanted Scooter. Like he knew what he wanted. And I remember walking like backwards, like crying, like walking backwards, but he was still shooting. Like he didn't stop, like he was still shooting. And then he ran. I knew Scooter was dead because the car started drifting. He couldn't hit the brake. I remember the car crashing and me just like falling to the ground crying. I remember people outside saying like, that's Sneaky T, that's Sneaky T. And I was just screaming, screaming, screaming. And then the police and the ambulance came. I just sat there and just looked at the car and was screaming until the police came. And I remember them dragging him out the car and he had like blood coming out his mouth. And he had blood coming out his mouth and I was just crying. I was like, is he gonna live? Is he gonna live? Asking the officer, like, is he gonna live? Is he gonna live? And they said, we gotta get him to, we just gonna get him to the hospital. I heard him get to the hospital. We gonna see. I just knew it wasn't good.
Unfortunately, Sneaky T has no idea who the shooter was or why he went after Scooter. But the news quickly spreads, and the community, often at odds with police, bands together to help find Scooter's killer.
The streets are talking, and we need those streets to talk to us.
That's the thing about Baltimore. The people are resilient and always willing to give you another chance. And they rallied around this particular murder because he was relatable, and they saw him as somebody who had survived the odds and was doing the right thing. I think it was just this, we can't believe it. And who would do this?
Right away, the Baltimore police receive a record-breaking number of tips.
Scooter's murder woke the city up.
I had seen more than 300 plus murders in that year, basically. And all the murders that had taken place, I had never seen the abundance of tips that we had in this particular case.
The tips that were coming in ranged from who possibly had set him up to listen to the lyrics of this person rapping.
They wanted to provide things like links to different social media, links to other rappers who had song lyrics that could target Lil Scooter.
A lot of times in the hip hop game, and we've seen this from years. I mean, I grew up with East Coast, West Coast, Biggie, Tupac. You know, lyrics can sometimes get a little rough. And if one group thinks they're being played by another group, sometimes it doesn't stick with just being in the studio. Sometimes things pour out to the streets.
In the days following the shooting of Baltimore rapper Lil Scooter, investigators sift through hundreds of tips from the community. Most are dead ends. But a confidential informant working for police provides them with a name.
The informant reached out to their handlers and immediately told them exactly who was responsible for the shooting. Cortez Mitchell.
Cortez Mitchell is a 22-year-old resident of Glen Burnie, Maryland, a suburb of Baltimore.
Our informant was able to tell us right away that not only did Cortez Mitchell shoot and kill Scooter, he told him where the gun was. It was from there that a search warrant was executed and the gun was located exactly where Cortez Mitchell had advised the informant where it was going to be.
Detectives only have the informant's word that the gun belonged to Mitchell and was the one used to kill Scooter.
Just because an informant says something, we don't go and lock someone up right away. We still have to do an investigation.
You want to send that gun to the lab. You want to match up ballistics. You want to get DNA or fingerprints. Unfortunately, some of these things take time, even if you get it rushed. This is a city now that is on pace for 1,000 shootings and murders every year. 1,000. So that's how much evidence is backlogged. That's how much evidence is being processed on a regular basis.
From this point in time, we want to look into Cortez Mitchell, get all of his background, learn about Cortez Mitchell.
While investigators wait for lab results, they talk to everyone they can find with information about Mitchell and any possible motive he might have had for killing Scooter. Word has it that Mitchell belongs to a rap crew known as the Young Go-Getters.
Cortez Mitchell is affiliated with YGG, Young Go-Getters, the opposite of YBS, Young Baller Shining, which is where Scooter was a part of. Once we saw that, we say, okay, this makes sense.
YBS is from West Baltimore, and YGG is from East Baltimore. The two don't get along.
Scooter's entertainment group, Young Baller Shining, or YBS, had an ongoing beef with Young Go-Getters, aka YGG.
You either live over East or you live over West. That's a Baltimore thing. Don't ask me why, it just is what it is. Very small, tight-knit communities that stick together.
You won't be able to tell if you're from out of town, but if you're from Baltimore, you can tell if someone's from East Baltimore or if they're from West Baltimore.
West Baltimore is known for young, fly, and flashy. West Baltimore is like where the fly guys at, where the fly girls at. Getting money guys, getting money girls.
I don't want to portray it as a gang situation. I refuse to do that. That's not that. But there's a lot of stuff that can go along with this. History of East, West, redlining in the black community is something that's very serious.
Scooter rep YBS till literally the day he died. He loved his guys and he loved his crew.
He was loyal to a cause that he thought would change his life and the guys around him. And they was hopeful that Scooter could take the YBS brand to that level.
Some wonder if the beef between the crews is what got Scooter killed.
And I don't really think it was about him. I think it was about who he was associated with. It was a plan to get rid of the team, you know, and what better way to hurt you is take the top dog.
Early in their investigation, Baltimore police have identified 22-year-old Cortez Mitchell as a potential suspect in the murder of local rap star Lord Scooter. Since the two men belonged to rival crews, detectives believe it's possible Scooter was killed to send a message.
A lot of times, associates might do something that might lead to the person being killed. We were looking for other shootings that may have taken place and see if there was any connections with Scooter's case. That's when we found out about the Devontae Robinson case.
Police reports show that 24-year-old Devontae Robinson was shot in West Baltimore at approximately 1 p.m. on June 25th, only a few hours before Scooter was killed.
Now, according to witnesses of that shooting, Robinson was walking on the street when another man opened fire from a black SUV. Despite being shot 3 times, Robinson survived the shooting.
What we come to find out is that Devontae was loosely associated with the rap group YGG, Young Go-Getters.
That's Cortez Mitchell's crew. Although Robinson's shooter wasn't identified, detectives wonder if someone in the YBS crew might have orchestrated the attack. If one of Scooter's associates shot Robinson, it might explain why Scooter was killed.
Who was his homeboy? That's one of the things that we look for. Like, who's your main man? Who's your ride or die that's gonna be with you everywhere you go?
The person who best fits that description is 23-year-old Fred Catchings, a West Baltimore native and Scooter's childhood friend.
Catchings happens to be a close friend of Scooter and the YBS crew.
Had Catchings shot Devontae Robinson? Police learned Catchings was at Scooter's side in the hours before Scooter was killed.
What we come to find out is that Scooter was with Fred Catchings at the basketball game.
Catchings ended up leaving the game prior to Sneaky T and Scooter, and given the violence that followed, it's possible he was trying to avoid being ambushed by Robinson's crew. Instead, he might have gotten his friend killed. As investigators begin the search for Fred Catchings, countless mourners from the West Side gather to lay Scooter to rest.
Everybody was there. I mean, he had a line all the way down the street. It was beautiful. He looked like he was there asleep, but it was just hurtful, you know, to see a young brother laying there like that. It was just unbelievable this kid was gone.
There was hope that the remaining members of YBS would choose to follow Scooter's path of nonviolence and to end this cycle of payback for good.
There was this energy in that space where it was like these individuals were now carrying the torch. That Scooter had done as much as he could while on Earth in his short 23 years of living, and now it was incumbent upon them to take up that mantle. You know, don't let this derail you. Don't let this take you off your mark. Stay in the trenches and let's finish the work that Scooter was doing his best to do in his beloved city.
5 days later, the community is dealt another blow.
Scooter's manager, Trayvon Lee, is gunned down. And he dies from 2 gunshot wounds to the chest, just steps away from his home. From the outside looking in, it is abundantly clear that someone is working very hard to pick off individuals from Scooter's camp.
Earlier that morning, around 10:30 a.m., 3 other young men were ambushed by another unidentified shooter. It is unclear whether the shootings are related, but the violence in Baltimore is clearly escalating.
Police here in Baltimore are used to acts of retaliation. But what they learned with this case is that this was payback on a whole nother level.
The trail of violence begins to go back and forth. It was a bloody tennis match going back and forth throughout the city.
This city is definitely an eye for an eye. If you do something to somebody, your family member, somebody is gonna get you back.
Desperate to stop the violence, Baltimore police hold a press conference on July 7th.
You can't allow street justice to take place because it's only leaving family without their loved one.
A lot of people sit here and think, oh, you cut me, I cut you. You shoot me, I shoot you. But where do it end? How many people you gonna hurt? How many people gotta suffer for it to end?
This payback mentality is killing off so much talent. And you're taking food out of kids' mouths, because now this parent is gone. They supplied food for all these families. It makes no sense to me.
It's sickening. It's heartbreaking. Everyone wants to get the last word. They don't want the police to be involved in it. They're gonna handle it themselves.
It's a disease that has to be stopped.
The murder of Baltimore rapper Lord Scooter has turned into an all-out war. And investigators are doing everything they can to put a stop to it. So far, they've been unable to locate the man suspected of instigating the cycle of violence with an earlier shooting, Scooter's friend, Fred Catchings. But on July 8th, police catch a break when he's pulled over during a traffic stop.
During that car stop, a gun is recovered. Catchings is placed under arrest, and that gun is linked to the shooting of Devontae Robinson, which took place just hours before and shooting and murder of Scooter. Fred was brought into our homicide office. I stepped in on the interview at that time, going back and forth. Fred began to open up about what took place with Devontae Robinson.
When confronted with the ballistics evidence and surveillance video, Catchings admits to shooting Robinson. He says he believed that Robinson was hired to shoot him, so he wanted to shoot him first.
This was the catalyst to everything taking place afterwards. Fred Catchings just shoots a member of YGG, Devontae Robinson. YGG comes back to shoot at Scooter.
Allegedly, the man sent to kill Scooter was Robinson's friend, YGG member Cortez Mitchell.
Fred Catchings says that while Devontae Robinson was in the hospital recovering from the initial shooting, his friend Cortez Mitchell hit the street looking for revenge. Retaliation needed to be felt. When they found out Scooter was at a public event that day, the Peace Rally, they wanted to hit him where they knew it would hurt.
What we come to find out is that the shooting of Scooter was in retaliation for what Fred had done to Devontae earlier that day. A payback, 100%.
And I was like, damn, that's kind of messed up. It hurt my feelings even more knowing Scooter wasn't the person or involved in whatever happened earlier that day. I had no idea about nothing, and I could have died with something I had nothing to do with.
Investigators charged Catchings with murder and turned their focus to Mitchell. When the crime lab completes its tests on the gun recovered after Scooter's shooting, they confirm it was the murder weapon. Unfortunately, there's no way to prove Mitchell pulled the trigger.
Okay, we've heard that Cortez Mitchell did this. We've matched the ballistics. That still doesn't say Cortez Mitchell did it.
No prints recovered from the gun, but fingerprints are very fragile. They aren't always there. Building a case, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
And I think this is a part of a frustration for the public. It's like they say, y'all know who did it. But investigators get one bite at the apple because of double jeopardy. Just because you know who did it, you have to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt when you take it into court. And if you don't have it, you can't bring those charges.
As they work to develop more evidence, detectives fear the violence will continue.
Street justice doesn't operate on probable cause or beyond a reasonable doubt.
The streets don't need the same amount of evidence to bring someone to trial. You said he did it, I know he did it, we're gonna take care of it ourselves.
On October 10th, 2016, those fears are realized.
Before investigators can make a move to arrest Mitchell, gunfire erupts in West Baltimore once again. Cortez Mitchell and Devontae Robinson were together in a vehicle stopped at a red light when an unknown gunman opened fire, killing Mitchell and wounding Robinson once again.
Cortez Mitchell was shot and killed, literally the exact same way that Scooter was shot and killed. In a vehicle, at a stop. The saying is, if you're going to seek revenge, make sure you dig 2 graves. This is a prime example.
As soon as this happens, you go right back to, this is payback, this is retaliation, this has got to be linked to this event.
Since Cortez Mitchell was the only suspect for the murder of Scooter, his death ends the investigation, although plenty of questions remain.
Bringing this case to a close was bittersweet. It was, yes, we wanted to get the person involved in the murder of Scooter. No, we didn't want anyone else to die in the process.
Does that give the family the closure that they need? I don't know. Only they can answer that. Because sometimes you want to see them in court. And it's whether they say, I'm guilty because I did it, or the judge or jury says you're guilty because the evidence says so.
For the community, it's not enough. They want someone to be held accountable, not only for Scooter, but to send the message that continued violence won't be tolerated.
With Scooter's suspected killer now murdered, prosecutors push forward to try Fred Catchings for the initial shooting that allegedly spawned this cycle of payback.
But the violence is far from over. More than a year has passed since the string of shootings that claimed the lives of multiple men, including Baltimore rapper Lil Scooter. And the city is still reeling.
Scooter had so much potential. He had kids like literally passing out, like to get next to him. My son was probably about 3 or 4 at the time, and he loved Scooter. Losing him, it's like everybody lost someone that day.
It's a tragedy worsened by the fact that the man who may have set it all in motion was one of Scooter's oldest friends, Fred Catchings.
I didn't know Fred as well as I knew Scooter. From what they say, he was in the streets and he was about his business, but I didn't see that in Scooter. Scooter stood for what he stood for, and if he had an issue, I'm pretty sure he would do whatever it is he had to do, but not just outright just trying to hurt somebody.
Regardless of what you end up doing, you have to watch your circle. And even when you might be making it, it might be some people that still are trapped in that world and lost in that world, and they can bring you down if they're not ready to get out.
Fred Catchings decides to make a deal with prosecutors.
Catchings initially pleads not guilty to charges of attempted murder, but with the evidence and his own admission, he ultimately pleads guilty to 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder and the use of a handgun.
In August 2017, Fred Catchings is sentenced to 32 years in prison. But the cycle of violence doesn't end. In 2019, his intended victim, Devontae Robinson, is targeted by someone else.
Devontae Robinson was later shot and killed, literally in the exact same way that Cortez Mitchell was shot and killed and Scooter was shot and killed. And we're still looking for the persons responsible for that.
The murders of Devontae Robinson, Cortez Mitchell, and Scooter's manager, Trayvon Lee, remain unsolved.
It's not the closure anyone was looking for, but those who remember Lord Scooter will always find inspiration in his life and his music.
There are certain preludes in life that leads to success, whether it be a better education, a good job. Scooter found a future in his talent as a rapper.
People need to hear his story because, you know, he came from a struggle and survived some things and was trying to do the right thing and show young people the right thing.
I think he's seen what the other side looked like. I think he felt it, he could smell it. And, you know, for him not to be able to complete that task, you know, was unfortunate. Not only for the complexity of that situation, but the entire culture of Baltimore, young men and women.
One thing I will say to up-and-coming artists, the children that look up to artists like Scooter, you don't have to go the street route. There's nothing glorious about starving and selling drugs and killing one another. That's not glorious. What's glorious is being victorious and coming out of it and giving back to your community and getting us all out of that situation. People don't realize when you take a life, you don't just take that life. You take so many other people around that love them.
When you're that close to a person, you're not thinking about money and fame and all that. Hurt is hurt. You can't skip past that. You can lose money, you can get it back. You cannot get back that person that you lost.
I had stopped doing music for a while after that happened. I feel like I'm kind of letting him down though by just pushing my talent aside, not really focusing on music how I should. I kind of got discouraged a little bit. He was my motivation. I miss him.